Welcome to KizunaJuviJust, where we discuss the uprising issues shaping the juvenile justice system in the United States. And in the last episode, we established that we're just teens and we're very impressionable. And we also talked about nature versus nurture, and how that plays a part in teens our age, making the decisions that they made and um, committing acts that are not that um, accepted in our society. And um, as we stated, that we're actually not, all of us teens here on this podcast are actually not that well equipped with the knowledge that of the juvenile justice stories around our area, as we're not exposed to them. So today we're joined here with the co-director of the API Rise community, Billy Tang, and he's going to give us more insight about the high-risk situations that we're not usually exposed to. So, Mr. Tang, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Billy Tang. I serve as co-director for API Rise. That's Asian Pacific and Asian Pacific Islander Reentry and Inclusion to Support and Empowerment. Um, Pronoun he, him, his. And yeah, I think that's
Okay, yes, thank you so much. So we're just going to ask you some questions, like that we touched upon in our last episode, and then we'll also ask you more personal questions and your experiences. So let's get started with the first one. Oh yeah, we also established that like we also talked about what happens to the individuals who got out of the system and like
Mhm.
what they can do after they get out and making sure that, or like preventing that they don't uh do commit their acts again. So how do you think society can better support the young individuals who came out of the system and prevent them from furthering their criminal activity?
yeah, I think education is very important. Like just providing access to like education. I think sometimes like a juvenile who's experiencing uh, or have a run-in with the justice system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, they might not have like that educational environment, right? That brings them there. And I think a lot of times, like just society just being aware of like their surroundings, their backgrounds, their family atmosphere, the environment that they grew up in, right? And in
Yes.
understanding those traits, like be more attentive on what are the needs of that youth, right? And really just like individually uh find out, right, what is um the challenges, right, and obstacle that the young individual is going through, instead
Mm.
of just having the individual, like, say, report to like probation officers,
Yeah.
and having all these like uh, rules
Protocol.
and restrictions, right? So those are the things that us society is like mindful of, like geared towards like rehabilitation, instead of like continue to like punish an individual. And I feel like sometimes like juvenile, they're um I mean, they're just for it was just poor decisions, right? And that brought them to the justice with the running with the justice system, and providing, like, say, more of the social care
Yeah.
support,
Hmm.
right? And yeah, I think just intentionally, right, finding out what ways that um the system can support the individual, right? So whether
Yes.
providing them with like therapy for trauma, or assist them with their needs, right, in the local environment. So those are the things that society should be focused more
Yeah.
on, right, instead of
Right.
just punishment.
Yeah. Providing more resources for them to um making sure like to improve themselves. Yeah, I definitely got that. Thank you.
Exactly.
Uh-huh. So yeah, based on that, you have experience with like high risk situations like that. So do you have any effective strategies for like preventing these juveniles committing these acts and supporting the youth at the in these high risk situations?
Um, yeah, I think for me, Well, of course, when I grew up, it's way different from, now, right? But
Yeah.
I think, similar, juvenile, uh, running with the laws are often resulted from, like, say, it could be, the family atmosphere, right? Or
Mm,
the communities that they grow up in, right? Some
yeah.
communities are just like, um, I guess, are marginalized, right? So they don't have the resources that
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
communities have. So making sure that the school systems too, right? Making sure that they pay attention more, right, to
Yeah.
young students. I know a lot of times, like in some schools or communities,
Hmm.
the classes are often very overpopulated, right? So
Mm, definitely.
providing more resources for the classrooms, providing more counselors.
Mm,
Um, it just takes like sometimes it just takes like teachers or council pay more attention, right, to the youth.
yeah.
Like if they notice like there's truancies or dropping grades,
Yeah.
just be attention about talking to the individual, right? Find out what's going on instead of just focusing on, oh, I should report this to the parents, or I should because
Yeah.
I think that one makes it more worse, because then you don't know what the family structure is, and then
Hmm.
you know the kid will get in trouble with with the parents, right? And it will cause more
Or yeah.
yeah, it'll be like a ripple effects, right? That drives the individual to further make poor choices also, right? And geared to, they'll gravitate towards like the streets, their friends from the streets, the gangs. So
Yeah.
being and having more like programs that like mentor youth, right? And
Yes.
if a counselor or teacher or some you know
Trusted
um
adult.
yeah, a trusted adult notice that, right? And
Mhm.
just be more mindful of just talking to an individual, having the conversations, right, are very helpful. um but yeah, I think us as adults, as society, just need to pay more attention to
Pay attention.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, yeah. I think we all collectively agree on that. In our last episode as well. And you talk about like environment and atmosphere a lot. So I think that also ties into our main topic of nature versus nurture. So do you have any like experiences like working with in the API rights community? Like do you have any examples of like nature versus nurture? Like are some juveniles like really made or like it's part of their nature to be like that, or were they influenced like by their environment?
Yeah, no, I think it's never part of the nature. I don't think anybody was born thinking of doing or
Mm,
making poor choices, right? I think it's environment.
environment. Okay.
And I could just use myself as example, like, you
Okay.
know, growing up, coming over as like refugee, learning, English as my second language. And of course, my family wasn't wealthy. So, we often grew up in an environment where it's lacking. And I'm not saying, an excuse to like make poor choices, but I'm just saying that, um, my surroundings and the people that I hung out with were all other like refugee kids, right? And um, it's just, yeah, circumstances led myself to make poor choices in life, right? And I think that a lot of like immigrants family or refugee families that's coming here to the United States, like, they their first instinct for survival is to like to provide food, shelter for the families, right? And
Mhm.
that often create like environment where their kids are often like left home alone, um just like very not attentive, right, to the kids.
Yes.
And as a
Mm,
result, like the youth will gravitate towards like their friends, or um the communities, right? And
indeed. Uh-huh.
really seek like the comfort and the belonging, right? That
Mm,
as youth, right? I think that's only natural, right? We all want to feel accepted, belong, and we all want to feel like there's a community for us. And unfortunately, in some environment where there's like gangs or high crime rates, right? And
yeah.
most likely that decision making is geared towards that, right? And Yeah, so I say it is the environment, like, take example like yourself, right?
Yeah.
All of you all, you grew up in like I'm sure like a good
Yeah.
family atmosphere, provided for, and you really don't have to worry about a lot of things that other kids have to worry about. And
Yeah.
kids are in the situation where there's like high crime and gangs, when they walk to school or when they or even in schools, right? They are exposed to all those things that one way or another may lead them to those poor decision making.
Yeah, we completely understand that. And I think it's great that you're sharing these examples with us so we can better understand what is going on in our age that we're not aware of. So I think, Justice, did you want to jump in with, I think you had a question about that nature versus nurture, right?
Yeah, okay. I think growing up in an immigrant family, was it kind of hard to even just talk about what's going on in your life? Like, is there a sort of disconnect that made you feel uncomfortable and led you kind of to the path that you went on as a kid?
Yeah, totally. I think, growing up in like an immigrant family where, your parents are focused on like just survival, right? And I think, I don't in like the Asian cultures, right?
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
We don't usually have conversations. I don't
yeah.
know about,
Hmm.
how you are right now, but me growing up, right? Like, you know, my mom never asked me like, oh, what's school like or how you doing? Or
Hmm.
it's just like, all right, eat your food and go study and do what you're supposed to do, do what you're told, right? So,
Mm,
those are things that I think unfortunately our culture, right? And and it's not it's not, I'm not trying to say to like blame my parents on it. It's just
Yeah.
like that's how they grew up and that's how they know how to pass on to the kids, or that's how they know how to survive, right? So
yeah.
Hmm.
yeah, so I think as we go on and like say parents of my age, right, probably understand better nowadays to like, all right, be more attentive to the kids and engage in conversations. I hope.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but yeah, I'm hoping that that's the case. So
Hmm.
definitely, yeah, this you know just talking about my experience. I didn't grow up in an environment where in a household where, yeah, we talk about daily activities um or how you're feeling, right? No,
Mm,
no,
yeah.
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 Huh.
So can I follow up with that? So what do you think, I guess, parents or maybe even your friends can do to kind of intervene early to
Oh,
prevent these, like, to prevent going into crime or going into other things?
Yeah, hmm, I think in a family, if um there's definitely need to have some kind of like programs where families can engage with their kids, right? Or even have like a dialogue conversations,
Yeah.
and even sometimes with the language barriers, right? I know some families are
yeah.
like they're coming from another countries and they don't understand the culture here, right? And the youth as well, their kids as well. So um just having some kind of like family supportive programs, right? That
Hmm.
engage family in like conversations, and then and as peers, right? Just engaging in more like a proactive activities, right?
Mm,
I don't know, what y'all youth do nowadays, but back in the days, there well, my days, right? There weren't a lot of technologies, or so we often hang out in the streets a lot. But I think nowadays with technology, I think you all like hang out in virtual space, something like
yes.
that,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So yeah, I think as peers, if you recognize that your friends, right, are not doing well, just have a conversation like, hey, just listen, right? And
Yeah.
Mhm.
sometimes we don't like people to like tell us what to do or give us advice, because there's always like the pride or like the pride factor, like, oh yeah, I'm not, but just like, hey, I'm here, if you need to talk or however I could support you. um
Mhm.
so just being like a friend,
By being a
Hmm.
friend to others, yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
I really like that message.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, these are really great answers so far, so great job. Um, so I think we actually read upon your story, like of you like coming to America and you had to go through prison, I think. Was that I think I read your story, yeah. So um do you have any like um beliefs that the social perceptions of like juvenile delinquency differ from like adult criminal behavior? Do you think it's like should they be weighed the same or because there's a lot of influences on juveniles, but like there's also influences and environmental factors for adult behavior as well. So do you have any like social like do you think there's a kind of like scale for the social perceptions of juvenile delinquency and adult criminal behavior?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think now studies have shown, right, that like our brain development doesn't fully develop until like
Yeah.
the age of like 26. So, in knowing that, you really can't compare like a juvenile like action decision makings, right, to an adult.
Mhm.
Um, I think that, as as youth,
Yeah.
this should be more, more compassion, considerations around like, if you there shouldn't be punishment for youth because
Mhm.
you know like we now understand, right, that
There's so many factors.
yeah, a lot of factors like your brain doesn't fully develop and comprehend like the whole nature of really the world, right?
Yeah.
So in that I think juvenile shouldn't be uh you know I guess the
Punished? Yeah.
punish, or yeah, shouldn't be compared to an adult.
Right.
And as I'm speaking, we
Yeah.
society still does that, right? Because
Mhm.
and it's through like say the severity of like the crimes, and um it's
Yeah.
just heartbreaking to see like if it's like a 16, 17-year old juvenile commits like a serious crime, that he can be sentenced to like life without parole, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is very you know just heartening to
To
know
hear.
that
Yeah.
to today we're still doing that to like juvenile, right? Instead of
Mhm.
providing more of like trauma support, trauma therapy support,
Yeah.
counseling, educations, all those factors that
Yeah.
that youth should be receiving, naturally. So
Okay, yeah, definitely. I think yeah, that was a really I think we learned a lot from your response. And so yeah, how do you think society can better understand and address the issues underlying like the youth the youth and like going trying to make bad decisions? Like do you think like how what else can society do to address like all the environmental factors that affect the juveniles making their decisions?
yeah, I think it started with like education or educating
Yeah.
the community at large, right? I think maybe like the school, right, should have like a mandatory you know uh class or a course that address, or that educate people on those like issues, right? So that people understand. And not even with high schools or college, but community in general, right?
Yeah.
Maybe like say um I don't know if they still have like what do you call it? Uh what's that parents group at school? PTA, is it PTA?
PTA? Yeah, we have
Yeah, we
PTA.
still have
Oh
that.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. Like like educating in that space, right? So the
Mhm.
parents would know. And then um I think for like API rights, we try to be more visible on like those issues, right? By
Yeah.
like cabling in events, right?
Mm.
Community events. So in that sense, that's how we could reach out to the community and just let them know more about the the justice system, how and
Yeah.
how it involves like juvenile and both juvenile and adult, right? So
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. So does anyone else have any questions to hear in justice? Um, if not, then we're gonna ask, I think, can we ask a little bit more about your story just to like give the viewers more about where you're coming from?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, let's see. Uh, actually, so I believe we read that you joined a gang. Is that like it how was that? I feel like we were all kind of shocked by that, but we were all like so excited to have you on this podcast because we're like, wow, he has more experience than we ever know, any adults like we ever known. So yeah, how did that kind of impact your life? I know that was a long period of your life. So how did that impact you? And like, do you ever think about that time and how far you've come now? Because I know you're very successful in your API rights community now. So yeah, how did that experience impact your life?
Um, I always say like, yeah, I mean, it wasn't a good experience. It was like, once upon a time, my youth life where, I made poor decision and like I, mentioned early, the environmental factor that,
Mm,
contribute to that, that led me to make those poor decisions and,
yeah.
plays a big factor, right? Like I said, I came here as like a refugee.
Hmm.
Um, really, my mom was just busy, working, right, and
Yeah.
providing food and shelter, and then that's her way of showing love. But in my distorted thinking back then, it's like I'm not receiving that from my mom, right? I'm always like I feel invisible at home. I feel like like I just don't matter at home, and
Mhm.
the alternative was like gearing towards like the street life, right? And
Mhm.
it started up as like friends, right, from like I don't know, middle school, then, went
Yeah.
to high school and then, just trying to fit in, right? Trying to find acceptance. At first it was like, all right, I want to, just hang out with my friends. And then, eventually that, morph into like, um, missing school, smoking, all those like, poor choices, right? That I made that led to, and then eventually it was just like, I feel like the gang was more of my family, right, than my
Yeah.
own family. So it was like that distorted thinking that, and it all factor into like just, feeling like being accepted, right, in the gang environment. I feel like, hey, these are, the people that have my back, right, or
Yeah.
these are the people that are gonna be there with me, no matter what. So when you think like that, you really um kind of put the gang in the pedestal, right? And
Yeah.
in
Mhm.
my in my thinking back then, it's like, all right, I was willing to do whatever it takes to feel like, to continue to feel accepted, to continue to feel
Yeah.
embraced. And not only that, in a way to like, wanting to like be looked up to, right? So those are things that, I think, as the youth and just not knowing a lot about um
Yeah.
the emotional aspect, right, of like
Yeah.
family. So and not to mention it's like, hey, I came here, during like say my early stages of child development. I was
Yeah.
missing a lot of like the nurtures and the the care, right? So trauma plays a factor that I never knew back then, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's where sometimes society will have to pay more attention on like
Yeah.
youth that comes from another different countries or experience that trauma, right? And provide more of that care. So I'm not saying that it might make a big difference, but it might,
Yeah.
if I were to have like receive some kind of like counseling
Mhm.
or therapy, right? That and
Helped you. Yeah.
make me feel like I am, I am
Belong.
heard or I am
Yeah.
seen, right?
Yeah.
So those are things. And yeah, I look back right now, it's like all my experience led me to where am I today, right? So I can't say that, you know, I acknowledge that, so it's those saying like you take the good with the bad, right? And
Yes. Yes. You're
it
right.
makes you a better person. So I
Definitely.
really feel like, if I didn't go through all the experience and learn about, learn from my mistakes and my choices, right? And that yeah, I wouldn't be sitting here today talking to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I think
So
thank you so much for sharing.
yeah, and
Yeah.
also just reiterate, like, my
Yeah.
past doesn't define who I am today, right?
Yeah.
So putting that message, like,
Yeah.
hey,
It's possible. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think we all kind of look up to you today. Just like your story really inspired us. So that's why I'm just so happy we're able to connect with you today. And I think, let's see. Yeah, I think that was a
I,
really great response. I think, that will really help us. Like I think that gave us more insight. Like 'cause we just read about your story, but we really never like felt it or kind of understood it. And I think right now we all kind of had that understanding together, and I think that really helped our podcast together. So thank you so much for that. Um, yeah, and just let's see. Do you have any questions for us? Like, I know we kind of like bombarded you with a lot of questions. So do you have anything for us like to answer? Like, as we're actually really young and we don't know much. But yeah, if there are any like questions that you want to ask about our generation.
Yeah, no. First of all, I just want to commend you all for even like caring about these juvenile justice issues, right? Because uh yeah, I think you know youth your age really don't think about those issues, right? And
Yeah,
I'm very inspired and impressed about what are you all doing.
thank you.
Um, and I think yeah, I think my questions is like in your perspective, like
Yeah.
schools, right? Are there like, programs or any kind of like youth programs that really promote that awareness, right? In your
Mhm.
campus.
Yeah, great question. So actually, I think my district is doing a really good job. Alhambra Unified District, like Mark Keppel is actually doing a really great job now. There's a like Dream Center is an it's like a resource where like it's a room for all like minority groups where they can come in and like have a safe space for them to be in. And
Mhm.
like during lunchtime, it's open. There's like resources for like there's always a teacher there or some sort of attendee there that's there to answer any questions and help them with any projects they want to start. Like there's a lot of funding that actually goes into this Dream Center resource, and
Mhm.
it really helps like everyone make sure they have a resource to like feel like they're accepted and have a place in the school. And there's I think with social media and a lot of influences, a lot of teachers now are actually caring about our mental health. Like for example, my math teacher, there are some days where we just have like nap time or like we have
Mm.
days just to chill out just because he knows like the amount of stress we have as high schoolers. I think everyone is a lot more understanding now in our generation and really understands the root causes of the stress levels and a lot of things going on in our in this day and age, like the pandemic, how it affected us. And I think yeah, there is a lot of resources now. There's a lot of awareness about mental health, and the community now is very cautious and understanding of where everyone's coming from. I think that's just for my school. That's what I'm seeing now. Is that happening for all of you guys? Justice, Juhi? Yeah.
Well, I go to John
Um,
Marshall High School, and oh, all right,
you
but
can
we're in
continue.
LUSD, and I think it might be due to the neighborhood that we're in, but there's like no resources towards
Mm.
Oh,
like gang intervention or even just like intervention for troubled youth. So yeah, we do not relate to that.
oh, okay. Thanks for sharing. Actually, I did not know that. So we're learning together. Juhi,
Mhm.
did you want to add something?
Oh, yeah. So like as Angelina said, like the Dream Center, we
Yeah.
kind of have something like that. It's called like the Wellness Center.
Yeah.
And actually next week we have Wellness Week. So it's like during lunchtime and after school, there are some activities on campus where students can just like, I don't know, take time to breathe. And the Wellness Center, it's open throughout the week, and you can just ask a pass from your teacher if you really need it to take some time out of class and like regroup, take some time to yourself.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that. Rin, does that happen at your school? Because Rin actually goes to a farther school, so we're not
Oh.
really, yeah.
Oh yeah, personally, I go to school in Irvine, and there it's like a really safe community. I'll say like there aren't really like education about like all these like gang or like bad choices things, but
Uh-huh.
yes, we do have some care about the mental issues or like
Yeah.
problems. Like for example, once in science class, it's like the test day, but the teacher, when students finished the test, the teacher gave out students like a coloring, how should I say that?
Worksheet, yeah.
Yeah, coloring worksheet, so that students can feel like relieved after the test.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think from all of our experience at our school, there are being changes made now, like
Yeah.
of more care and awareness and attention to all of our mental health and making sure that we are in the right state of mind and looking at a more positive light of life and just understanding that there are um routes that they're like pathways that are not that good for us, but we are choosing to see them in a better light and focusing on how we can prevent any further activity like that. But yeah, thank you for asking that. I think that was a great question. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and I think just from your answers, like where justice is at, I think it just goes to show like the disparity in the community, right? Where, like say LA Unified School, where some communities are really less have less resources, right?
Mhm.
To pour into the students, and like justice was sharing, like they don't have that kind of like care for their
Yeah.
for the students, right? And I think my other follow-up question is like, do y'all do like say in schools right now, do you notice like um classes or or even programs that teach us on like more like racial solidarity or kind of like culture-based learning type of environment, or I mean
Mm,
classes that
cultural, I think, actually, I'm a part of my AUSD Student Advisory Council, and I think next year we are implementing a new course called Ethnic Studies. So I think it's going to be required for us to take an ethnic course. So that is upcoming. But for right now, there is no specific like class that talks about like cultural things. But um, I think in like yeah, actually, in our school, we don't really talk about like cultural things and like ethnic studies, but I think it will become like there is progress being made towards that. Like, yeah, I have a presentation for the board, like the AUSD's board has a new like all the credits are being re-edited because they're gonna add in ethnic studies as a required course. So I think um soon we'll all be educated on more cultural things. So yeah, there are changes being made. Is that happening at your schools? Like I don't.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we already have ethnic study
Oh,
classes,
okay.
and I think they just go into the history of immigrants in America.
Mm,
Like one of those classes is focusing on, I think, Latinos, and then I think they have a subsection on Filipinos, like growing up in America.
mm.
And I'm taking AP US history, and my teacher makes a focus of trying to understand how all these immigrants were affected just by the condition of the US at
Yeah.
various times. Mhm.
Is that happening at yeah, Jay?
Oh, yeah. So at our school, we're also like starting to implement like ethnic studies. We actually just added a course. I'm pretty sure it's called API. Wait, API studies, like Asian Pacific Islander studies. So it's like a class that you can take. It's not required, but it's like, an
It's available.
extracurricular.
Yeah.
We also have like a bunch of clubs around campus, like,
Mm,
you know, um, Chinese Culture Club, Filipino Culture Club, Latino Culture Club, like etc. And there's also EDI, which is Equity, Diversion, and Inclusion, where they, on like certain holidays or like just for fun, they'll have like some cultural like activities during lunch or after school that anyone in the high school can attend.
oh, that's great. Does that happen at your school too, Rin? Do you have anything?
Yeah, we don't really have like a ethnic course, but in
Mm,
our Spanish class, from this year, they decided to talk more about like these like Hispanic heritage, cultural
mm.
stuff. And like, yeah, you're required to learn that during our class.
Yeah, so I think with our changing times now, I think all our teachers are implementing some sort of ethnic studies in our courses. So yeah, I think um more acceptance is being made in our generation now. Yeah.
right, that's good.
Yes.
Thank you all for sharing.
Yeah.
I have more questions, but I'm not gonna bombard you all with all my
Yeah. And we have
it's
like
not my show, it's your show, so
um you can ask like one or two more questions. We're here for you and we're here and yeah.
No, yeah, I mean, it's just good to learn about like what's going on
Yeah.
in your like high school nowadays.
Yes.
Yeah, I think from my experience, it's just like especially in like the Asian communities, like I feel right growing up, like I live in a bubble where I didn't really understand other cultures, right?
Yeah.
And sadly, so it took me going to prison to understand like the impacts of like the Black and brown communities, right? As far as like how um you know how like I guess like the system, right? Like marginalize us into our prospective community, and you see in a prison system like there's more of like say the Black and brown communities, right? And and some APIs too, but not as the population not as large. Um, but I think that for schools to like educate people on other communities, right? While
Yeah.
it's crucial, right? Because and vice versa too, right? Like say I'm pretty sure in other communities they don't really educate their students on like how like the API cultures and
Yeah.
so I think like cross culture learning and about each other's culture is it's important to like
Yeah.
I guess combat like ignorance and stereotyping, right, of people of colors and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty much all the questions we have today. But thank you so much for joining. Like, we're so happy that you joined us today on this podcast. And we loved your answers, your responses, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I think that will really help us like jumpstart our next episode. And if you want to check out this like we're gonna edit everything that we said here, and you can watch the episode. I just put in the chat. KizunaJuviJust is our like our main platform, and we're gonna be on Instagram, TikTok, and those are probably our main topics, our main platforms. But we're also thinking of posting on YouTube. Did you want to add anything like what you do at the API Rise community, like have a segment to promote that? Or
I was gonna share more about what we do as like our
yeah,
API
sure.
Rise program. So um as you know, we're a re-entry organization, right, that provide like a space to support the API population, but not not limited to not exclusively. We always say we will never turn anybody away, right?
Yeah.
Everybody just have the equal opportunity to seek up, seek assistance or support from our programs. Um, so our program consists of like prison in reach, where we journey with individual, the moment they get in prison, right, until every step of the way until they get released. And when they get released, they transition into like our care support program. So we have another section called member and community care.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so in care support program is similar to case management, but we don't want to, uh, we don't want to continue that perpetuating a cycle of like case and management, because people deserve to be cared for, not cared for and support, right, and not
Yeah.
view as like a case or or to be managed. So we
Mhm.
intentionally said care support, and in the care support, really just journeying alongside individuals who are coming home just to assist them with getting IDs, getting employment, housings, and really acclimate them into like our supportive communities, right, where they could feel like they belong and they are empowered and supported, right, in the API Rise space. Um, and also like doing policy advocacy to like changes the
Yeah.
the I guess the immigration systems and the criminal justice system, right, to uh, be more fair and to be more like to have more like equality, right, to
Yeah.
all people. And yeah, so basically we just kind of provide that space for folks, and also engage them with community, right, educating communities on like cultural solidarities, the the even the narrative of like refugee immigrants or just immigrants in general.
Yeah.
Supporting with uh the anti-deportation movement, right, where it
Oh,
is separating families that are here in immigrant, and just really bring to attention of like the system continue like criminalize immigrants, right, like the double punishment, people have served the time, but but also when they get released, right, they are handed over to like the immigration custody enforcement, right, ICE, to be further like punished, right, for poor decisions that they made like 20, 30, 40 years ago, some even. So those are the the awareness that we bring to to people, and then really just increasing the visibility, right, of like there are API folks who are impacted by the system, right? And I think like the whole model minority myth, where the Asian are supposed to be successful, or supposed to be like smart, or supposed to be rich and doesn't need support. Those are all false, right? Because some of us do need support, right? And some of us are not wealthy, and not everybody has that equal opportunity of like educations, and and growing up in an environment where where they are or like a positive and a healthy environment, right? So so those are the issues that API Rise is addressing. When we are doing more um I guess like workshops on with the youth cultural learning, right? So we feel like at your age it's important for y'all to like learn about other cultures, right? Not just be in a bubble about just like the API cultures, but be more aware of like our Black and brown communities, and building power with other marginalized community, right? So
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Did we have any extra comments, just in case anything had to be said?
Oh yeah. I had to think about like all your answers. I just had one more question. So coming out of the justice system and being a former gang member, did you ever feel a sort of like stigma in how people perceived you, or kind of talked to you, or anything that you experienced with other people?
Oh yeah, definitely. Coming, when I first got out, there's always that shame and stigma, right? Like, oh, how would people perceive me once they know that I just got out of prison, right? Or I did this much time, right? So, I literally spent like what, over 2 decades in prison. So just just trying to reacclimate into society. And especially with like I grew up Chinese, right? So in my community, it's like, all right, it's a shame. Like my mom's not gonna tell people like, oh, I've been away from prison. It would be like, oh yeah, he was out of state, right? And he just came home, and really it's just like I mean, it make me feel like, oh, it's the shame and the stigma reinforced, right? Like um so people who come home does go through that, especially, and knowing like I am accountable for my action, right? And knowing that I instill upon myself also like the shame factor, right? Like you know so that I carry that even today, right? Going to like certain events or atmosphere, like you know I wouldn't engage in conversations where it's like, oh yeah, I was formerly incarcerated. It's just like if it comes up, then I'll, I don't mind sharing, but really just to have like the conversation open up, but like, oh yeah, I'm formerly incarcerated. It's really I think to me it just depends on the space I'm at, right? Whether it's the right place to share or not. So
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think
thank you for asking that, Justice.
Wait, so to kind of prevent that shame, what can, I guess, in general, society do to help you feel more comfortable and help you feel like there isn't that shame of coming out of the justice system?
I think like what API Rise is doing is really welcoming home people, right? And we have like our monthly meetings where we do when people come home, right? We have cake to celebrate their freedom, right? We have other communities that consist of like lawyers or social workers or teachers, so it's just like kind of like a mix of communities where when they're coming home, right, they could see that they are welcome, right? Not just by people who are formerly incarcerated, but also by the larger community that have regular jobs or regular professions, right? That really show the support and that care, right, that they come home to. So just I think a lot of our members will come home when they go to our monthly gathering is they feel that sense of community, and and that will help them feel like included, right, and really just, I don't know, hopefully take away a little bit of the shame factor, that that they carry. So
a lot of community acceptance. Yeah, I love that.
yeah.
So if we don't have any other questions, then I think we're gonna wrap up right now. That was very productive. I think we did a great job today. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story, your responses, and I think we learned so much from this one interaction, and I hope that you learned something about us as well. And yeah, you can check us out, KizunaJuviJust, and thank you for joining us. We're gonna wrap up now, right? Like, are we gonna? Okay.
And thank you for the work that y'all doing too,
Yeah.
and having that kind of like topic and stuff. So very very the future is hopeful with y'all with y'all caring about this juvenile justice issues, right? So I'm very inspired and impressed of what y'all are doing at such a young age. So just want to share that.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you for just thank you so much. Oh,
I learned from you all too. So we learn from each other. So.
Yes, this was I feel like this is a great experience for all of us, and especially for our viewers today. And make sure to check out Mr. Tang, Billy Tang at APA Rise if you ever run into him, because he's pretty fire, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us on KizunaJuviJust. See you next time, and stay tuned for more episodes.